X-Men 97 brings to life X-Men 275, and I'm going to tell you all about it in this week's recap and review of X-Men 97 Episode 6, titled Lifedeath, Part 2. What's up, my know-it-alls? Before we get into anything else, thank you so much for clicking on the video. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. On the heels of last week's episode, I know that we've all just been emotional wrecks. Hopefully the trauma's healed for you. If it hasn't, do me a big favor, jump down in the comment section so we can have that conversation, because I tell you what, I feel your pain. So let's get into this. This week's episode is, what else are you going to expect? You're going to have a filler episode, especially on the heels of something as dynamic and powerful as last week's episode. So the one thing that I've noticed is we're weaving several storylines together, and I'm okay with that. You have to remember, it isn't like the comic books where you get a middle, so to speak, or there's always it's always a second. You never get a third act. Everything's always a second act, which means you're literally always going from one extreme to the next. So this is a recreation of the comic book cover I'm talking about. And in this cover, it was, you had the X-Men who were absconded with by the Shi'ar Empire's people because Deathbird challenges her sister. And so they literally go and they get the X-Men to help. And because they had no other outfits or choices, they got them all the blue outfits, which is really funny because you get to see Wolverine in the yellow and blue, like the classic yellow and blue, not his yellow and blue. Anyways, this handsome stud right here, in the comics at first, you're like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Only to finally find out it's Professor X. So that's the outfit you saw in this episode, and it looks amazing on him. I really thought it was interesting that this whole episode in essence is what was happening while. So while things are going on in Genosha and all the stuff from last week's episode, there's a whole other, universe, frankly, of things that are happening. When it comes to Aurora and Storm, and specifically that storyline, her and Forge continue to face down against the Adversary. Who is the Adversary? The Adversary is a malevolent force of nature. Some people say that it's another version of the Shadow King. One thing that Marvel has always done is certain aspects of the universe, whether it's fear, death, or this mental mind, this darkness that's in all of us sort of idea, we're all part of the same thing. And so you may see different shards of those things. One is the actual Shadow King proper. Another one is the Adversary. Take all of that with as you will. So in this, we get to see Storm and Forge. Storm is doing her best to help Forge, sort of with, he was bitten by the Adversary. So he's got this sort of festering wound on his shoulder, and they're trapped in the house. Forge manages to use his mother's shaman book of magic, and he casts a spell banishing the Adversary. So there's only one thing to do, and there's a special root, as there always is in these stories, and it grows in a deep, dark place. Storm herself is a known, she has fear of enclosed areas. She has to face so many things. While she's in this dark place, you see the Adversary try to come at her again, and what happens is you find out Forge's machine worked. It was her own mind that was keeping her from fully realizing her powers again. So what happens?
Let them thunder, for I am lightning.
We get the fullness of classic Storm. She comes out, erupts, explodes out of the mountaintop, and you get to see her ride the wind, and she's riding alongside horses, and it's just this freedom. And eventually, obviously, they got the root. She helped Storm. She helped him, Forge rather. And so she's in her classic outfit, her classic X-Men #1 outfit from back in the day in the comics. And it looks beautiful. She looks beautiful. She's wearing the little crown, as she should, as all goddesses should. And it's one of those moments that I was like, I'm really happy to see Storm back to normal. Like, not normal, but back to her whole self. And somehow the idea that she toyed with the notion, because that's what the Adversary was using against her, was this idea that you are betraying yourself, ergo you don't get powers, you don't deserve your mutant abilities and all that stuff. It's a wonderful storyline, but then it ends with they turn the news on because now they have time and they see the news about Genosha. So see, it butts right up into the thing. Meanwhile, across the stars, and this is actually where the episode quote unquote started, and it's that scene, that clip that was dropped last week of Deathbird and her and the Imperial Guard, who, by the way, the Imperial Guard are the Shi'ar version of the X-Men. Yes and no. They're all mutants. Mutants in the Shi'ar are, yes, they're a second-class caste, but they're not shunned per se as much as they are seen as lowly. And so you have their Superman, who's Gladiator, and he's amazing. I'm not keen on the voice actor they got to play Gladiator. I feel like if Wolverine is the paragon of what a character should sound like he almost, you have Kevin Conroy, who epitomizes the Batman voice, and then you have Wolverine from the X-Men animated series, who literally is that's still the voice I hear when I read X-Men comic books. Then you have Gladiator's voice, and I'm not too keen on it. That's just me though. Anyway, Gladiator is literally the Imperial version of Superman. He's got heat vision. He does the breath thing. He's a powerhouse. The guy's a beast. Anyway, all of a sudden, in the middle of her conquering some people, you see, specifically, it's the Kree. And you get to see Ronan the Accuser, which I was like, okay, good stuff, man. Again, a lot of Jack Kirby-isms flying around this episode. But more important than that is I really love the representation of Deathbird and how the Shi'ar look and the Imperial Guard. So then we get to find out, there's an announcement that comes out. Lilandra is announced.
Your Empress is to be married, and our empire shall welcome a new emperor, Professor Charles Xavier. I
do love the fact, it's the same voice actor who plays Morph. He's doing his best to do an impersonation or impression of the old voice actor who played Professor X. And I think he's doing a wonderful job. He really is. Would it be my first choice? No, but because the problem is they had Morph do a spoof of Professor X, and now that's all I can hear.
While I trust that all my students would gladly die for my dream of a better future, I would prefer it be avoided.
Right? It's like, oh, I don't know, man. It's just I know why you did it. The problem is it's difficult to play that off in animation when all you're going by is the voices. Anyway, immediately you get the impression that the Shi'ar do not like the idea of an outsider marrying their queen. And Deathbird, who really wants her sister's throne, uses this as an opportunity to undermine her and demands a special Shi'ar thing. It's sort of like I get the right of challenge, I get the right of whatever. And the way this works in the Shi'ar is the challenger gets to issue any kind of challenge they want. It's not just like, I challenge you and we'll fight you or whatever else. It isn't like that. What it is I challenge you to a game of pinochle. I challenge you to streak at the Super Bowl. I challenge you to anything you can think of. It isn't always a game of chance per se, sometimes, or skill or strength or something. Sometimes it's just, you got to go do a thing because I said so, because that's the challenge I've put forth. She says he has to allow Lilandra to wipe his mind of all memories of Earth, which is not unfounded considering the fact that Charles literally was debating, he was trying to just talk Lilandra into changing her throne world into Earth, or at least his corner of the galaxy, so he could be home with his X-Men and stuff. He's almost at the threshold to do it until in the council, they're like, will you denounce your X-Men? And he can't bring himself to do it. So Deathbird walks in, everybody, it's all these voices, and next thing you know, Charles pulls them into the mindscape, the astral plane. And he's like, class is now in session. And you're like, bro, he's so schooling fools. And he tries to explain some stuff to them. That's when he has his, what I call Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope moment. When Alderaan was destroyed, and all of a sudden Obi-Wan's like, it's as if 1,000 voices all called out and screamed, and we were silenced. Same thing. Professor X, in the middle of talking, in the middle of showing off, all of a sudden, he gets hit with the psychic wave of all the mutants that die in Genosha. He sees this giant interpretation of Gambit, and he sees him as, and he just knows. And he comes back and he's like, we have to go. I have to go back to Earth. And she's like, if you leave, it's going to be when my sister needs this and that. He goes, you don't understand. I can't abandon them. It's too much. I can't leave them like this. And he wants to go back because of what happened. And that's really where this episode ends. I mean, it intertwined between the two plots, A and B, but at the same, but I wanted to get the first one out and the second one out. But there you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. What's an all index for this episode? It wasn't bad. It's a good episode. It's a filler episode. It's a connective. It's a while you were there, here's what was happening episode. So it allows you to kind of stretch more storyline, but at the same time establish where all the other people were and what they were doing, especially if you're going to bring all those plot threads back. So comment below. Let me know what you thought. I personally believe this episode to be, for me, 7.5 out of 10. All right, guys, listen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you watching these videos. Do me a big favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're interested if you're going to get caught up, here's the entire playlist for this season of the X-Men, but more specifically, here's last week's episode, which just devastated everybody. So I cannot wait to hear more, and we'll talk again next week. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.